Yes.
Hello, Christian Metal Group. We are here with Pastor Bob. We're excited to do our first interview for the Metal Group and the largest one on Facebook. So this is an awesome opportunity and a great ministry we got here. I'll just start real quick. My name is Jimmy Sorrells. I'm one of the admins of the group. I have been a metalhead for at least 20 years. I used to book and promote concerts. I ran the South Carolina Rock for Life chapter when I was in college, and that's really where I got into working with bands from everyone from Spoken to Ludacris and Disciple, lots of bands. And although I'm not a musician, I've always been a metalhead, and I collect records. As you can see, we have here Vengeance. That is Pastor Bob's hand there. So yes, I am a metalhead collector, and I go to concerts every chance I get. So awesome. All right, Jay, go ahead.
Right. So I'm Jay Goodwin, and I am a metalhead, of course. You might see on the screen or in the link or whatever, that I have a one-man band called the Jazz Soul Metal Experience. And we really do go through all those styles. I've been a professional musician for as long as Jimmy's been a metalhead, like somewhere around 20 years. Music is all I do, and it's a blessing, basically. So yeah, so the Jazz Soul Metal Experience is a band, but also I do separate gigs doing jazz, soul, metal, gospel, like playing for churches and stuff. I fell in love with metal probably 25 years ago or so. And the Jazz Soul Metal Experience, we'll be doing some metal projects. I've done a little bit of that with that band. And also I have a couple of metal bands. I have a death metal band called Your Gods Lie Destroyed. And I have another band that'll be coming out with an album soon. I'm working on the demos now. That band's called Diaspora. And you actually heard that here first, because nice. I haven't really told many people. So, but I've been working really hard on these demos, and it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a big party with a lot of people.
Jay's pretty humble. He's been involved in a lot more than we realize. He's done a lot. Maybe not as many projects as Dale Thompson, but he's getting there.
That's a good one. But yeah, you know what? Thank you for reminding me. I have done a lot of like work just behind the scenes in music, especially with Christian hip hop, CCM. I'll just name like maybe 2 or 3 artists. I worked with the Tunnel Rats, like different people in the Tunnel Rats on a couple of albums.
One of my favorite.
I worked with Crown and Sorrow a little bit. So that's on the metal side. I did a cover of Altered States for a Grave Robber album. And also I worked with Crystal Lewis on a few songs with Peace 586. So that's just
I got to meet Derek from Crown and Sorrow. He was from my area before he moved to Texas. So
man.
I gave him a Metal Missionaries DVD. That was awesome. So
I need to give one.
We'll give him a shout out. All right, Pastor Bob, go ahead and just give us a little quick introduction for yourself.
Well, that's a difficult one. First of all, I'm old.
Oh man,
that's relevant.
Never.
I have been working with Christian rock and metal for 50 years this year, so it's been a long time. Started way back in the day with good friends Larry Norman and all the early guys. I have tons of Larry Norman and Keith Green and whatever stories, and
wow,
playing music for a long time, and I've been a pastor for a long time. So I've been kind of on the cutting edge of pioneering in all of those areas, and it has been the joy of my life. And I'm 70 this year, but I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. So
you don't look it.
Thank you. You're awesome. Jimmy, you just became my best friend.
Oh, that's what's up. I agree with him. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, so that's awesome. So let's start with just the real basics here. So when did you become a believer?
65 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I was 5, and the Lord called me to be a pastor when I was 6. So I've been at this for a little while.
Wow, that's awesome to know that young. Yeah.
I never felt like I had a very good testimony. And And so, because you hear these guys that they go, well, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this.
Mhm.
And then the Lord saved me. And I always think, wow, that's really impressive. So usually when people ask me to give my testimony, I say, I was involved with drugs and illicit sex and, all of these things. And then I became a Christian when I was 5. I don't know if that works real well, but it sounds good,
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I found that, we can relate. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you do. Your testimony relates to some people,
Yes.
There's always somebody and God can use anybody, right?
I know that's right.
Absolutely. And, I just feel like, personally, I have a testimony of God's power to keep us,
Mhm.
to get us started on the right track. And you guys raising children, that's the case, that when you train up a child in the way that he should go, there's a foundation there that you follow.
Mhm.
And that's a blessing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Let's go to the next question. How did you know that metal music would be your ministry?
Well, I think I kind of fell into it. Like I said, I've been involved with music for a long time. And all the old days, Maranatha music, before that. And so I've always been in the industry. And, I went through the whole Jesus People movement, and I watched people get involved with it and then drop away.
Mm.
And I told myself that if I ever got involved in another big movement like that, my focus would be discipleship and mentoring, because I think that's what that movement really lacked. And so one day I was a guest pastor at a church, and it was in the same city that Stryper lived in. And after I spoke, the guys walked in and kind of we talked about their ministry. It's sketchy. I don't remember a lot of it.
Mhm.
I just remember Steve Valdez, who was one of their main guys, roadies. And then we started Sanctuary there, actually in that same building. And Michael Sweet was the first worship leader. And the same week, we started what we called Metal Missionaries meetings.
Wow.
And I think we had 17 bands at that first one.
Wow.
Everybody from Barren Cross to everybody, all the early bands, Sacred Warrior, and a band called Prophet, which was George Ochoa and Roger Martinez, and a bunch of, that was their band before their bands. And then Roger Dale Martin and the guys from Emerald in those days. And so it kind of began not only the church, but a real hands-on time with the bands, and kind of pioneering and discipling and mentoring. And, I still work with most of those guys today. So, but that's how we started.
Sounds like a really exciting time. All that going on at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was and is.
So during that time, who were some of the other major workers for the organization that after that initial meeting you had come along and just take charge and try to help with things?
Well, a lot of the guys in Vengeance were there at the very beginning, and are still involved to this day. Roger Dale lives close to me. Glenn and Mancuso's moved now, so he'll be involved again. And those guys were intricate. Jim Laverty, of course, has been my worship leader all of this time. Michael Sweet just for a little time, because obviously they were a little busy. So Jim took over, and he's been the worship leader all these years, still is. Just, all the original bands were very involved, and we kind of did everything together. We ran all of their merchandising through the church. through Sanctuary. We kind of handled a lot of the mail. We just kind of did everything together. If one band was playing, another band was roadieing for them, so it was a family.
Really a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's talk
Yes.
about evangelism experiences. Let's just give me like one or two favorite evangelism experiences from that time period, or just from overall.
Jay, it was a different day. It was very different. And it was the day of the big hair,
Yeah.
And I had big hair and everybody else there had big hair.
Mm.
And everybody that came to the clubs, male and female, had big hair. When we had church on Sundays, I didn't know who spent more time fluffing their hair, the girls or the guys, because they all looked pretty fluffy. And so
Dude looks
a lot
like
of our evangelism, we were in the clubs. We didn't want to do churches. We didn't fit in churches. Churches didn't like what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the clubs and we played in places like the Roxy and the Whiskey and Gazzari's, which is not there any longer. But we figured, what is the ministry here? The ministry is girls standing in the bathroom with extra cans of hairspray talking to other girls, and going from table to table talking to people in the parking lot. And we were strategic with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was early evangelism. And then going up and down the streets on Fridays and Saturday nights, especially in Hollywood, and handing out band flyers from bands that were going to be playing. And our bands were usually sandwiched in between the secular bands, so that everybody played together. And, you remember those were the early days of Motley Crue and Cinderella and Poison and et cetera, et cetera. So this was the crowd in the early days. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, as you mentioned, Sanctuary is the home church for a lot of legendary Christian bands, and some of them are still going today or have gotten back together. Just tell us one of your favorite band stories from that era. I know you've got hundreds, but just something that comes to mind.
That's interesting. Well, one of the ones that means the most to me, I think, would have to do with Barren Cross.
Okay.
The guys in Barren Cross were very much a part of Sanctuary. Jim Laverty wasn't so sure about us.
Mm.
And he was wondering if perhaps we were a cult. And I would have probably wondered the same thing. I'm pretty careful with doctrine and with where people are coming from as well.
Right.
So Ray had suggested, the guitar player suggested, that I had a motorhome at the time, and he suggested that maybe I would take the band in my motorhome to this next concert that was at the country club. And we could just all talk and get to know each other. And so we all got in, and they saved the captain's seat for Jim. They wanted him to sit next to me because he still didn't know about me. And so he was quizzing me all the way. Well, what do you think about this? What's your doctrine with this or that? And so we got there, and right before they were ready to go on, Jim came over and he says, "Have you seen the bag with my clothes in it?"
Mm-mm.
That was a big deal because, they wore the spandex. They had to get dressed and couldn't find his clothes anywhere. And this is going to sound a little bit cosmic, but there have been just very few times in my life where the Lord has shown me something. And something profound that I realized was from him. And it doesn't happen to me all the time. In fact, it rarely happens to me, but this time it did. And God said, his clothes are in this bag in the back of this car that's in the parking lot. I hadn't even been to that side of the building and in that parking lot. And I told that to Jim, and I just saw his face go, "Yeah, that's what I thought. You're a cult leader."
Nice.
So I said, "Well, let's just go out and see. I just feel like that's what the Lord is showing me. And, it feels very strong." So we went out, and sure enough, his clothes, somebody had taken his clothes and put them in the back of their car, and it was unlocked. And we got the clothes out, and he went on stage. From that point on, we were best friends.
Wow.
And again, he's been our worship leader. He lives about a mile from me. I see him all the time.
Amazing.
And he and Georgia Choa and Jamie from Wedding Party are about to start on the new Sanctuary Praise album. So
No way. That's exciting.
it is exciting. And dude, once you see everyone that's about to be on the album, you'll be very excited.
That's cool.
So, but Georgia Choa moved here too about 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
Built a
the
house here
wedding
in the
party
city.
is not something you hear brought up often. I remember somebody in college turning me on to them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Jamie wrote, Jamie and Will, who passed away a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
The singer, Jamie was the guitar player. Jamie and Will wrote pretty much all the music. Jamie's writing some stuff for the new album as well. So some of it will have that flavor. It'll kind of be all over the place depending upon what musicians, and we have some very cool musicians, new and old, on there. So
Awesome.
it'll be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The Christian Metal Group will definitely be supporting that.
Absolutely.
Good. I appreciate it.
All right. So my next question is, so growing up, I learned a lot about Sanctuary, reading Heaven's Metal magazine,
Yes.
HM. So let's talk about your relationship with Heaven's Metal and HM.
Well, it's always been good. There was a magazine years ago called CCM, Christian,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Christian Contemporary Music.
Contemporary Christian. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a fan of the magazine. I had known John Stills, who had the magazine. I'd known him since he was a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
Long before then. We'd been friends for a long time. John actually went on to be the president of GMA, of the Gospel Music
Right.
Association
Okay.
later on. But so Doug Van Pelt was starting HM magazine and spent some time with John. And John said, you need to have Pastor Bob write a page in the back, a Pastor Bob page, and just bring it all together. And that's how I started writing for the magazine. Doug and I are still great friends. He's one of our podcasters, on the Sanctuary
Very cool.
podcast, the Sanctuary International Matrix, and still does a good job. He's about to do quite a few more interviews as well with different bands, and he's good at that. So, but we've had a great relationship all these years.
Yeah. I've had some interactions and chatted with him online, and he just seems like the most genuine, down to earth
He
guy.
is.
Yeah.
And a phenomenal sense of humor. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So just with your ministry over the years, what have the Christians and the secular responses been to your work with Sanctuary? How have you seen different responses?
Well, it's been interesting, Jimmy. I think Sanctuary is an international ministry. We have actually helped start 22 festivals around the world.
Wow.
We've been in a very large presence in a lot of different countries. So I haven't been really involved with metal in the United States for a while. I'm starting to get a little more involved right now, but because I've been spending all my time in Europe, and my home base in Europe has been Switzerland for quite a few years, and I travel between Nashville and Switzerland, and then Switzerland, the home base there to travel from. So it's been an international thing, and I see repeated what we started here. When we started here, there were all kinds of ministries, so-called ministries, that were warning people about us, that we were satanic, that the music, the beat was satanic in the music, and the drill. And I could tell so many of those stories. But we went through all of that, and then every festival that we've done, I have met personally with the clergy and ministry heads in those particular locations. and they have very sincere questions. Why are you bringing this music into our country? You know, isn't this music, the beat kind of satanic? Isn't the, you know, especially when black metal started coming in, that's a tough thing to recognize. Now, Jay, you're wearing an X-Dole shirt, and one of the bands that we've worked with so much is X-Dole. We started Bob Fest, and they named it, and I'm honored that they named it after me. But we did Bob Fest, which is pretty much the first European festival in Sweden, and X-Dole did the worship every year. Excellent worship, and you know, I'm still close to the guys. I talk to David, especially the drummer, all the time, and you know, I was one of the hosts for their the movie that they did. You know, the X-Dole movie, but just phenomenal guys. And, you know, if you watch that documentary, you can kind of see what we went through in Europe, you know, especially in Norway. There we do a festival called Nordic Fest. And David from X-Dole is the pastor of a church called Subchurch, and we worked very much with over the years. But they've gone through, you know, the heavy metal community was burning down churches when they were all, you know, when they were all involved. So the things that we've gone through in every country have been a little different in every country, but there's one constant, you guys, and I'm excited to tell you this. There's one constant, and that is that every time I met with those pastors and invited them to simply come and see what we're doing, be my guest for the festival, listen to the teaching, talk to the kids, watch the interaction with the whole thing, and then make a judgment. We won them all over.
Amazing.
So I think people just need to see for themselves what's going on.
I love that. So quite a few years ago, there was a scripture series, I believe, that you did. It's like an audio scripture series that you did. And I remember my grandmother, just a personal story, my grandmother pretty much started working right out of middle school. So she didn't complete her education. So she read like on maybe a lower school, middle school level. So I got her those New Testament audio books
good
one year. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. I thought like I remember just looking at, you know, those credits on there and like, hold up, Pastor Bob Beeman, like really? He's doing that. So let's talk about that and how that came about.
Well, you know, it was a labor of love, and it was a project I couldn't refuse. So the Dollar Tree stores approached me and said, we'd like to put out the New Testament on CDs. This is a few years ago, but we'd like to put it out on CDs. Would you be interested in narrating the New Testament? And I said, I really would. I'd been thinking about it anyway. And I think I'm about to do another project with narrating too, the scripture, but this one with music. But they said, oh, that's awesome. We're going to use the King James Version. Now, the King James Version is not an easy version to narrate, but by any means. So when I say it was a labor of love, it would not have been a labor of love. I never would have gotten through it, because it was labor. And especially when you're narrating and you make a mistake and you start over, you have to match your cadence, you have to match your voice inflection, you have to match your mood. There's so many things. So it was a project, but I don't think it's at the Dollar Tree stores anymore. I think it's on like Amazon and different places now. But that was a fun project. And Jamie from Wedding Party did the production on it. He's the one that recorded and put it together with me. So we got to spend a lot of time together.
That's awesome. I know you are originally from California, correct?
Well, I'm originally from Montana, actually. And I know you can tell by looking at me, but I'm a farm boy.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So,
But I moved to California in 1980.
Oh, in
Yeah.
80. Okay. So what inspired you to move to where you are currently in Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, actually, a few things. California was getting difficult to live in.
Yeah.
A lot more difficult now, but it was getting difficult then. You know, I used to enjoy, and our whole church, we're in Redondo Beach, we would enjoy, you know, going to the beach and walking on the pier, and we had, you know, fellowship at different places. All of a sudden, that started being overcome with gangs, and it was not safe to go there anymore. And people were putting bars in their windows. But the Lord was also speaking to me a lot about the international ministries, that there was a lot to do. Metal, if you remember, in those years, really kind of died in the United States for a while.
Right.
And so, but it didn't die anywhere else. It never has. It's always been popular in other countries. So I put my efforts into that instead. I wanted to get someplace where I felt comfortable living out of California, and someplace that might be a little faster to travel out of. Wow. And so I moved here and spent a few years here doing teaching, and you know, we had a sanctuary group here as well, still do. But and then in '99 we started our first festival in Europe. We did Cornerstone all those years and a few other things too. So my biggest regret is really kind of ignoring the metal scene in the United States for all these years. And not that I wasn't involved at all, but it didn't have all of my enthusiasm. I was so involved with the international ministries, pioneering metal in other places. Mm-hmm. So, but I moved here for it to be kind of a more central location. It was time for me to move. I needed to get, like I said, the international ministries established, and I couldn't do that while trying to run a big church too. So, yeah.
All right, that's really cool. All right, well, let's talk about your work in Nashville. I know that one thing that I've been checking out is your ministry to the homeless.
Yes.
For example, and also that reminds me, especially I've been looking in. I'm gonna tell you the reason that I looked into it is because my parents they started a homeless ministry also. As soon as the pandemic started, so I was kind of looking around for models, and your ministry was one of the models that I kind of looked at, you know, for things.
Awesome.
So yes, let's talk about that.
Well, 18 years ago now, actually, I was speaking at a church here in town, and I was talking about taking responsibility for your lives, and I made, I guess, what would be considered a bit of a derogatory statement about homeless, that they needed to take responsibility as well. Jay, somebody came up afterwards and said, Pastor Bob, have you really ever sat down and actually talk to a homeless person in depth? Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, I don't think I have. And they looked at me, Jay, and they said, maybe you shouldn't talk about things you don't know anything about.
Wow. I know.
Yeah. Now, they were right. So I went down and I asked, you know, everybody, where did the homeless people hang out? And they pointed to a bridge. They're under that bridge mostly. I see a lot of people there. So I walked over there. And as I'm walking over there, these older guys with big beards were sitting there. They're on, actually, you could tell they were all ex-bikers. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking over there and said hello to them. And one of the guys says, hey, are you a biker? And I said, no, but my cousin is probably the most famous biker in the world, Sonny Barger. He just died last week, president of Hell's Angels. And I said, you know, my cousin is Sonny and president of Hell's Angels. Of course, they all knew who he was. And we had instant rapport. And we talked about Sonny. We talked about a lot of things. We were instant friends because of that connection. And they said, would you come back sometime and bring some food with you?
Oh,
And
wow.
so I went home and made some sandwiches, came back and did the next day. And all of a sudden everything started growing. And today we're feeding about 11,000 meals a month. And
Wow.
it's gotten a lot bigger. The homeless situation has gotten a lot worse, obviously, during the
Right.
pandemic and the recession. But Jay, that's awesome that your parents have gotten involved. Good for
Mhm.
them.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's crazy for us. I've been out there a lot of times with my dad, and when you said the bridge, I was like, "Yep, been over a lot of bridges,"
Yes, yes,
and stuff. That seems to be a big area, and I
yes.
know my dad's van goes by every week. We do it like twice a week right now in
That's great.
Louisville. But yeah, it's Saturdays is I think the biggest day, so we pass out quite a few bags of food and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
And I think Saturday's probably our biggest day too. We call it grilling and chilling, Jay.
oh wow, cool.
It's we have a big portable barbecue and we do a little grilling.
Love
But
it.
yeah, we're in 5 locations every day. And and we could do 50 times that much and not still reach everybody. So
I know that's right.
yeah,
No, that's right.
yeah.
So next I wanted to ask you about your daily devotionals. I know I see them posted. I know Dustin, one of our moderators, posts them pretty regularly, and
Yep. Sure does.
they're short and sweet, and they're scripture based. So how did you what gave you the idea to start doing that, as far as using YouTube and Facebook, and just how's that response been overall?
Mhm.
Well, I did it because I realized that people need a daily routine. They
Nice.
need a daily routine with the Lord. And honestly, Jay and Jimmy, you guys know that that you're only going to do what you feel like you have time to do. So kind of the shorter the better. So years ago I did a 3-minute. It's called what is it called? 3-Minute Sanctuary is the name of it. Still on a lot of radio stations, and people are still using it. I probably should start posting it again, but I realized that so many people were using it for their daily devotion. So I wrote the book. I wrote Metal Devo, and some great guys wrote it with me, and in it are quotes from everybody in the industry, some of my commentaries and all of that. And then somebody said, well, you need to do an audio from the book. And so, and I've only gotten half of them done. That's the next project.
Oh.
We were about half done, and then COVID hit, and studio time wasn't available, none of that, you know how it goes. And so, yeah, it's one of the projects we got to get back into. But, I just feel like even if you have 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to connect with the Lord, that's 5 minutes more than what you were doing.
Right.
And all kinds of things can happen in 5 minutes. So,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah, I just wrote that down. I wrote some of that down. Really cool. So let's talk about Sanctuary again. Let's talk about your target audience. What has been your target audience for the ministry, and really all the ministries maybe that you've had?
Well, I promised the Lord many years ago that I would stay on the edge of music, wherever the edge was.
Cool.
Now, Jay, I know you understand this because you're a musician. You draw a line and you say, okay, this is the line. I'm not going to go over this line.
I like that.
And then you keep redrawing and redrawing and redrawing. And I remember coming home from recording the first Vengeance album. So we shared the studio. The guys from Petra were recording during the day. And so we went in when they weren't recording to use the studio, we couldn't afford regular studio time. And it was a no budget album. My hand is on the cover. One of my elders did the art, the photography. Another one of my elders is a special effects makeup guy. Actually, he's a professor teaching that at Azusa Pacific University.
Oh, wow.
And but so it was a no budget album, and I also did some background screams in the album.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was driving home. I mean, early in the morning at this point, been there all night, and I was, I'd listen to the vocals, and this hadn't really been done before. This style of music was just beginning to become popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got this sick feeling in my stomach, and I thought, what am I doing? It even sounds a little bit satanic to me, and I realized that I'm going to have to defend this. So I have to really believe in it.
Right.
And as I watched the album release, as I watched its popularity, and as the testimonials from the music started to pour in, I realized that there are some times that I don't necessarily have to like things for God to use them. Now, not that I don't like it. I realize that with country music every day. I'm not a fan of country music.
You and me both.
Okay, there you go.
Played on
So I realized that God can use it even if I don't like it,
Yeah.
But and it's the only kind of music I really don't like. But Jay, and I'm sure you've probably done this. I've had to draw and redraw the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I know you said you've screamed and you sing and a lot of voice. Do you play any instruments too?
I play keyboards.
Oh,
there we go.
Let's see. You will hear some of my keyboards in Skizik's Dilemma from Tourniquet. I played the Satanic Calliope.
Yeah.
I have played professionally for years in past. I specialize in honky tonk music, ragtime music, and I even recorded a few piano rolls back in the early '70s when they still had player pianos, and a company hired me to do some piano rolls. So I've been very involved with music, and I play many instruments, and I've had a great time doing it. I've played on, Christafari is one of the bands from Sanctuary. In fact, Mark, the singer, is a Sanctuary pastor. I've played on their albums. I've played on, Tourniquet more than once, done speaking on Tourniquet. Just a lot of different albums over the years. But
so if you're just hanging out your house and you're just a leisure day, what are some of your favorite bands to listen to, secular or Christian or any in between? What do you just like to chill out?
Gosh, that is so hard because it depends upon my mood so much, as I'm sure it does you.
Yeah.
I'm on a Beatles kick this week.
Okay. Yeah.
I can remember the first time watching TV, seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show, and what a huge impact that was. That was a game changer in music. That was the extreme metal of the day,
Sure, yeah.
So
so
that music is embedded, and they were geniuses. I mean, music is genius. I'll listen to that. My dad was a big band fan, and I love listening to Count Basie and to all the old stuff. It's still
Rich.
some of my favorite music.
I have
My
a Buddy
father
Rich
died.
album. You listen to him?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
Rich.
I said Buddy Rich. You listen to Buddy Rich?
Oh, absolutely. One of the greatest drummers of all time, huh?
For sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But, I guess it just depends on the mood, Jimmy. And I think we're all that way. And then there are some times when I got to turn it up. And this morning I was listening to a little bit of Meshuggah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Very
and I
interesting
knew
band. Yeah.
the AR, and I knew them when they were in high school in Sweden.
Oh, wow.
And one of those bands you think, okay, these guys are going to make it. They were all professional musicians. They had studied classical music. They had studied everything.
Wow.
and they're in Piteå, Sweden. They were incredible. So yeah, it just it varies, as I'm sure it does for all of us.
Do you get into some not so mainstream stuff like a White Collar Sideshow, Blankenstein? Do you get any type of things like that?
Not so much. And I'll tell you, it's all I can do to keep up with what's going on in the Christian industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, I still have some great friends that are still playing in secular and Christian bands. And as you know, I still work with quite a few very well-known secular bands as well. But I'll tell you, the older I get, the more nostalgic I get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what happens to you when you put on an album that you listened to 20 years ago, and you remember what you were wearing.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember everything about that album, and a flood of memories come back. And I think the older we get, the more we desire not just the music, but all the memories involved.
Wow. Yeah, that's good stuff. Wow. First of all, I'm still tripping that you're a piano player. Piano's my main instrument.
Is it really?
Yeah, and I've done a lot of jazz gigs lately, and
awesome.
I've been getting back into ragtime and that kind of stuff a little bit more too. So
yeah,
I've been doing like a lot of traditional and modern jazz, like when I do stuff, sometimes
that's awesome. Well, good for you. That's awesome, dude.
That's
awesome.
So let's talk about mentorship for sure. And so of course with what you've been doing with Sanctuary has been awesome. And I think it's really key that a lot of the bands that started, like when you all started, are still around and still involved. I would say in the 2000s, maybe the early 2000s. And this, of course, was around the time when you were always saying that like metal had kind of died down, and
yes,
also you all were relocating and just so much stuff going on. But there was a new crop of metal bands, and especially Christian metal bands, that came up around that time. And of course, there's been some controversy because some of those bands weren't as rooted, and I think some of them didn't benefit from having a sanctuary. And then, of course, for that reason, some of those members and bands kind of fell off from the faith. So I want to talk about mentorship and how important that is, and what to do next, especially with new bands coming up.
It's one of my favorite subjects. Thank you for asking. So I believe in mentorship. I had the greatest mentor, my father. My parents met each other in seminary, so that's the kind of upbringing that I've had. But my dad was the kind of guy that when he talked about the Lord, he started crying. It was so tender, so good for him. When I started Sanctuary, Chuck Swindoll took me under his wing.
Wow.
and helped me through all those beginning times. And gosh, I don't know what I would have done without those times, because I didn't know what I was doing at all. So I've been mentored by the best, I feel like. But I learned a lesson early on, Jay, and I think this is important, that whenever you establish relationships, the key is to establish them for life. Wow. Every relationship is going to have difficulties. It's going to, your best friends are going to tick you off once in a while. It's going to happen. But to get through that is amazing. I have been stabbed in the back by some of my best friends who are still my best friends. We worked through it. And these days, I averaged it out, all the people on the staff of Sanctuary that are still active, still doing what we do, how long we've all been together, what's the average length of time? The average length of time is 27 years. And a whole lot of them have been with me for almost 40 years. Todd Bowe, who is the administrative director for Sanctuary, has been with me over 40 years now, even before we started Sanctuary. So, and he was there at the beginning, as a lot of these guys were. So I think that's what it takes. Now, I would take any one of these people and trust them to do anything. I would trust them with my life. And I think that's what discipleship is. It's teaching someone how to teach.
Yeah.
It isn't just teaching, it's teaching someone how to teach. That's mentoring. And so when you invest your lives into someone, you duplicate yourself and you duplicate what God is doing. And you learn a lot. I've had my balance there. I'm single, so I don't have a wife to keep those little things in check, But man, I've got some great women and guys that are around me that definitely keep me in check. And they know they can. They know they can speak into my life, and I've invited them to do that.
That's awesome. Well, going on those same lines, how can band members keep each other accountable? Touring is difficult and all.
Thank you. So I didn't go as far with that as I should have. I think that metal in the United States is unhealthy. I know that's a huge statement, but I think it's true.
But if it's true,
and
it's true. Yeah.
As I watch the people, for instance, the festival we just did, the bands show up right before they're going to play. They load in, they play their music, they sell their stuff, and we don't see them again. No, that wouldn't happen in Europe. That's not the way we do things there. The bands are responsible for ministry as well, for spending time with people. And then there's a foundation. Some of the things that I heard being said were definitely not scriptural.
Mm-hmm.
There just isn't the foundation that we need to have. So we've got some ideas. We came home and we've been brainstorming ever since. And how do we want to proceed with festivals? And we have quite a few festivals coming up. We're doing some new ones. We're going to be doing one in Sturgis at the big motorcycle rally. We have a big sanctuary tent there next year. Yeah. And other ones too. How do we make a difference? And you guys, I think we have a ways to go, especially in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bands have lost the understanding of what their job is as musicianaries, because that's what we are. Yeah.
I think you've nailed it there. I mean, you have so many coming out. It's like, we're in the Christian market, but we're not a Christian band. And I mean, the endless stories, renouncing their faith, deconstruction, on and on and on. And it's because, like you said, I believe it's the foundation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
And we're going to do it.
Amen. There we go. That's really good. Okay, so here's a question, and it's also related. We're just on this evangelism thing now. What should a band look for in a tour pastor?
Wow. Well, somebody that's not afraid to speak into their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's not necessarily a huge fan of the band, but is a fan of the gospel.
Okay.
Because I think you have to not be afraid to speak. I've had band meetings where, my secretary will buzz me and say, do you know that we can hear you guys screaming all the way in here in the reception room? And I can name quite a few bands where we've had that happen.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get through it. You got to be honest. You have to talk about things. You have to call each other out. We've had some horrible things happen with bands in the past, even with Sanctuary. Some of the bands that I thought were solid, some of the people I thought were solid.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Bible talks about sheep and wolves clothing, it is not easy for us to recognize. So unless you have that level of commitment and that level of integrity, it'll wipe you out when that happens, and it will happen.
Oh,
yes.
That sounds like it's coming from a place of experience and wisdom. So definitely appreciate
lots
that.
of experience.
All right. So here's a really serious question. What's your favorite thing to eat while on the road?
Wow. That's a tough one. Well, on the road. Well, let me say that every country has their own my favorite foods.
Sure.
My favorite food is Chinese food. And I I spent probably, there was about a 5-year stretch where I decided to have Chinese food in every country that I visited. And it was many countries. I had Chinese food with refried beans in it in Mexico City. I had, oh gosh, I could go on and on, but interesting food. I ate dog meat without realizing it in China. And, just, gosh, I don't think there's hardly anything that I haven't eaten.
Sure.
But I would say I still am a Chinese food guy. How about you guys? What's your favorite?
Man, that's a good question. I always like a Southern good home cooked meal, but
Yes.
I don't know, man. I mean, on the road, I always like a beef jerky, something like that.
Yeah.
Beef for the win.
You mean while you're actually traveling?
Yes.
Ah. Now, see, I'm one of those guys that makes some sandwiches before I leave because I'm kind of particular in what I eat and the quality of the food and stuff. So I always have my, the stuff that I feel comfortable with, and I always pack my food. Yeah, I do. And I'm cheap, Jimmy.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, for me, I like everywhere I go, I look for good vegan burgers and also beef ribs. How about that?
There you go. Yeah.
Jay covers it all.
Right.
Well, I get that because one of my favorite things to eat when I go out is the Impossible Whoppers at Burger King.
Yes.
I love those. That's better than the regular Whoppers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my family.
I get it. You're cool. You're cool.
Yeah, so let's see. I was trying to look at. Okay, let's talk about favorite new bands. I know we've talked about some of the old bands, and we've talked about some of the mainstays. So I know there's been a crop of new bands to come out. So let's what would you listen to or recommend?
Gosh, I hear so many that I think are just so promising. The one I think in the last few years that I continue to be so impressed with is Theocracy.
Oh yeah.
I love those guys. They've been with me for a long time, and in festivals, whatever. Been under the bridge with me with the homeless.
Wow,
love those guys.
Cool.
I've been with Disciples since they started, and although they are not a new band, they're a newer band.
Yeah,
and I continue to be so excited about those guys. Yeah, gosh, that's such a hard one because there are just so many great bands out there. I wouldn't even know where to start.
I tell you, one of my favorites is Witch Hazel.
Yes,
from Europe. What about you, Jay?
Yes.
You know what?
Yes.
I'll tell you. I just think about the names that you all said. They're definitely there's a huge Theocracy fan base in the Christian metal group.
Big, yes,
yes,
love them.
Yes.
People are starting to like Witch Hazel a lot too. Brutality is another one that
nice
a lot.
Yes.
I would say, obviously with the Extol shirt and all, when I'm not playing jazz or gospel music, I'm listening to death metal usually. So taking it here.
Have you listened to Azusa?
Yes. Oh God, I love that band. Yeah,
Dude.
they're really. I love their music.
That is awesome. Their album cover that David sent me is right up there.
Oh yeah.
And how about Flood? We forgot about Flood.
Yeah, Flood is amazing.
Dude.
Flood,
oh my God.
Flesh Killer.
Yeah, Flesh
Flood.
Killer. Oh God. Anything, you talked about Extol earlier. I think that anything that any of the members in Extol have ever done has been absolutely genius.
They definitely,
absolutely.
That's one thing that I love about them is that they do quality,
Yes.
It's not just we're putting out something. There's another band, oh my gosh, I think Jim Settle is the singer. What's that band? It's
I'm trying to think of the name of his band, but I remember seeing his post,
I've got the album, but man, that is one of the best thrash albums I have heard. It's
awesome.
All right, well, let's wrap things up here. I really appreciate your time. So how can we, as Christian Metal Group, how can we help your ministry? What can we do to support you? Where can people go to find out about you?
Well, we're at sanctuaryinternational.com. It's probably the first place.
Okay.
And all of our social media links and everything are there. We have a lot of stuff. You know, we have our coffee,
which is good. I
which
have
is-
ordered it. Yes, sir.
which is doing so well. We got two different kinds of blends. We have all of our mugs. Here's our mug of the month for this month.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's-
Now, where
and
does
it
your coffee
says,
come from?
Prayer, shut up and listen. Our crafter actually is in Florida,
Okay.
and it's Brazilian coffee now.
Oh, love it.
And but our goal was to have the darkest coffee possible
Nice.
without it being bitter. And so it's dark, not bitter coffee.
So it's
And
like
we use the Swedish water system for decaffeination, so our decaf, which is very healthy, by the way. The other is usually used. They use formaldehyde, so it's not real good for you. But
so it's like Impending Doom dark.
Impending Doom Dark, and there's
There we
another great band too.
Yes.
So one band I forgot is Rosalind. Rosalind in
Oh,
Denmark. Have you listened to them?
Yeah, that's an 80s band, right? Or is that a newer
No.
band?
No, they're a new band.
Uh,
And I know every guy in the band. I've known them since they were all kids. They've been
I'm not
in
sure
other
if I've heard
bands
them.
and they formed this band. And Rosalind, dude, you have to listen to them. They're really good. Yeah.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so you gave us our website. So how can we help you? Like buying your coffee, donating, helping out. If you're looking for volunteers at events.
Yeah, that's a big one. Is all of the proceeds from everything we sell go to the homeless ministry, and so that really does help that. But I would say that I'm more apt to ask the question, how can I help you? Sanctuary is here to serve the metal community. And if we can serve any of you out there, if there's something that we can do to help, to pray for you, if you need a little help in direction, any of those things, that's what we're here for. So
That's awesome.
I think I'm more apt to answer the question that way.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, just we do have a prayer post that we keep up in the Christian Metal group, and
Yes.
if you got prayer warriors, you can send them there. That's definitely a big help to us.
Great.
So we just appreciate you your time here and being, we just made you the Christian Metal group pastor, and
Yes, I love that, and I really enjoyed being on the page. By the way,
yeah,
what
awesome.
a great place. And what
And-
awesome people that are there too.
Yeah, well, we
really enjoyed it.
Well, our worship leader is James Franchise, as you know.
Yes.
He is amazing. So I'm sure we'll
Yes.
get to do an interview with him at some point. And before I forget, the band I was trying to think of is Hand of Fire.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah,
Hand of Fire. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yes, Hand of Fire.
Yes.
That's it. So awesome. Well, Jay, you got anything you want to add to finish close us out?
Yeah, we need to do a piano duet, music dilemma at some point.
Nice.
Actually, I think I know the song all the way through. Actually, like I know how to play it on the piano.
Dueling pianos.
Yes, let's go.
I would love that. You're on. You're on.
Yeah.
Let's
all
do
right.
it, Jay.
Yeah, put it on the calendar
and we can
now.
call it, Jay. We
Yeah.
can call it the PB and J show.
There we go. Let's
I
go.
think that would be great.
Let's
Good.
go. Let's do it. That is so hilarious, man. But this has been such a wonderful interview. This is definitely the best way to jumpstart our interview processes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Such a great time. Awesome one. And when we post it, we'll put all the links for everybody and everything. But awesome, man. Great interview, and look forward to working with you and helping any way we can.
I'm looking forward to it. Jay, Jimmy, thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
God
you.
bless
Have
you
a good
guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.